Welcome to the Yancy St Speakeasy, episode number 2. I'm Max.
And I'm Tracey. Are you ready to listen to two really stressed out dudes talk about a movie?
I hope so, because that's what we're about to do.
Alright, here we go. Diving into Black Panther. Holy crap, man, what a movie.
I so much enjoyed myself for that, because it was such a breath of fresh air. I think the box office and the reviews really speak that most people felt that way, but I loved that it was not just the classic, I loved that it was not the classic hero's journey. I mean, it was, but not in the traditional superhero sense that we're used to,
Yeah, definitely. I tried to keep myself away from too much spoiler cast before, which this episode will 100% be a spoiler cast. So, in case you were wondering, by the way that we're talking about it, we're gonna go pretty in depth with the movie. I tried to stay away from lots of trailers. I tend to stay away from trailers a little bit. Marvel movies, I have a really tough time doing that.
Yeah, because I'm so excited about them. I just want to get a taste. I do, and then I always regret it.
Yeah.
I always forget it because they're so good, and I always spoil it for myself at least a little bit.
It's so much better going into it with fresh eyes. So I try to stay away from previews and reviews because we went to see it together. It was super romantic. I loved every second of it. We got lots of beers beforehand. I got beer all over me during the movie. It was a fucking fountain.
Yeah, thanks to another friend of mine,
But it's okay because he and I are gonna play guitar at some point.
Yeah,
we're gonna jam.
And then you can pour beer on him.
Yeah, and on his guitar, I'm gonna ruin his instrument. It's perfect vengeance.
But so when I saw Thor Ragnarok, speaking of previews, the preview for that movie, I feel like it gave away the whole movie. Did you watch the preview?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like all previews do that. I mean,
I thought Black Panther was a little bit better about that.
Yeah.
Especially because there were some twists so when in the preview when you see T'Challa, when you see him having the challenge in the wading pool by the waterfall, I was definitely surprised that there was that twice. I thought that was going to be kind of a bit of a pinnacle moment towards the end of the movie, and then they threw me off by putting it in the beginning, and then I never expected it to come back again at the end. So I was surprised by that.
I loved that they did that because it's really important to me in superhero filmography and in comics as well. It's really important to me to establish rules so it doesn't seem like things are just getting invented on the spot, like somebody gets into a tight position or the plot needs to move on somehow, and they're like, oh, well, suddenly this thing, and then they establish that there's a sort of general challenge that anybody can undertake
I think it has to be technically it has to be royalty of some kind. I think.
Yeah, I guess it was because they had the whole clan system. I also missed the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Oh yeah, I feel bad. Tracy was buying me beer and popcorn. So
beer which later got spilled on me. I wish it would have been more like a wet T-shirt contest, and that would have just been the perfect way to kick off that movie. But
I cannot believe that we got 5 seats together in that theater.
Oh my god, people were really nice and moved in for us.
Yeah,
it was sweet. So I missed all the previews, which are my favorite, and I missed the first 5 minutes, which I guess was just a spirit walk.
Well, basically the first 5 minutes, which to be more clear, it started off as a little intro of T'Chaka telling youth T'Challa about the history of Wakanda, and it was pretty simple, but he basically explained that there were 5 tribes in Wakanda, and a meteor filled with vibranium hit the earth in Wakanda, affecting the plant life around it, and 4 of the tribes decided that they would be led by T'Challa's tribe, and the 5th essentially went into exile.
Yeah.
And not exile so much as they lived without. They went without
comforts.
The comforts of well, basically they didn't agree to rule by them, and so it wasn't that they didn't want the vibranium. I think it was more that they didn't want to be ruled by that tribe.
Gotcha.
And so because they didn't agree to that, they went without. But then it jumped to the early 90s, in which T'Chaka went to Oakland and found out that his brother was plotting against him to bring vibranium to the rest of the world, which was a pretty brief scene, but definitely very important to the movie.
I walked in on T'Chaka straight up stabbing his brother.
Yeah, right.
In the heart with his claws.
Yeah.
So that was a good intro to the movie for me.
And it was a great intro. Like they did a good job with it, I thought.
They covered a lot of information in that movie in a very efficient way.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. I I can say that I straight up adored the movie. That's it firmly cemented itself in my top 5 in the MCU. God, I mean, like, I don't even know where to start talking about it. It was first of all, from a fucking color and artistic standpoint, the movie was a fucking feast for the eyes. That was so much fun to watch. Like, I was just trying to, my eyes were like twitching around the screen, trying to just like lap up every detail.
And the best part is that it was all the beauty was in the practical effects, and like the CGI was not really spectacular. They still did good with the color, I thought, but most of what was so beautiful was all the practical effects that were essentially the culturally, the African influenced culture which they put into the Wakandan country, and like the costumes, the sets, you know, all that stuff looked really good and not cheesy, not corny.
Right? Like, no, they did their fucking research, man. That was a celebration of culture. It was awesome. It was so great to see that kind of with the Wakandan technology and and all of the African cultural influences. Just to see those mesh like that, it was. I thought it was amazing, especially I don't know if this is being insensitive. The guy with the big lip thing. I never.
Oh yeah.
That was just every time it cut to him, I just imagined him trying to like order something at a fast food window, and just.
I think that's a little insensitive.
Maybe I'm sorry. It's just it's very large, and the physics of it baffle me more than anything else. Anyway,
it did look super cool though.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was awesome. But then, I'm just immature. Anyway, moving on. I also was a fan. Holy fuck, powerful women.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, the women stole the show in that movie.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they did a really good job of making a movie that, I don't know how to put it, but even though on the surface you're told this is a movie about an African superhero who's also a king of the most advanced civilization in the world, like when you take that, somehow they still defied all expectations. You know, they defied most tropes, and in an amazing way. They made the lead character not by far the most interesting, and yet it still worked. Like, you know, sometimes you have complaints if the main character isn't the person you're rooting for the most, but in this movie it worked because you loved all the characters so much, you know.
And it really did. His paramour, his bodyguard, his sister, his mother, just all of them, and even Forrest Whitaker was in that. And that's I actually didn't know he was going to be in that movie, and it surprised me. And he didn't overact his part, and I thought
he didn't try and steal the scene.
Yep, he sat nicely in there. Martin Freeman was also in there.
And you know what? Honestly, I don't know if people really like Martin Freeman. I know, so I don't know if this will alienate people.
I do love him.
But in this particular movie, I didn't really get behind him. I felt like he was in there. This is honestly what I felt like he was in there for. I felt like he was in that movie for white people to feel like they could be part of it.
Like, to feel like the only white person in the room.
Like, so, like, if you all the white guys who love comic books could be like, oh, I'm Everett Ross, that's who I am in this movie, and so I can relate. But honestly, I feel like he wasn't necessary.
No, I actually agree with you there. He didn't need necessarily to be in the movie. He had some fun parts, and I thought it. I think it was more them being like, oh, see, this does tie into the rest of there are aspects from the rest of the MCU.
I think
that's
probably true. They wanted to incorporate at least one character from the rest of the MCU.
I mean, they did have Claw in there, and I absolutely loved him in there. He was a fantastic foil.
And that was a good one. I didn't expect him to die.
Yeah, that was wow. Yeah, what a ballsy move to like. He was so enigmatic and charismatic, and he was. Do those words mean the same thing? Moving on. Yeah, but I think that Killmonger like really struck some nerves, hit some chords.
For sure. I think a lot of things in this movie were very legitimate. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that it's a political movie, and the fact that they were able to incorporate that successfully into a superhero movie, it's I don't know if you can hear that, but we just poured some more drinks at the Speakeasy.
I brought some fancy ass rum.
Yeah. So last podcast, I supplied the fancy rum. Today, it's all Tracey with the fancy rum.
Yeah, I took it on my own initiative because I felt obligated because you also bought me Chinese food last time I was here, and I was like, I need to provide something this time. I have stuff to make mojitos. I'll make you a mojito next time.
One of these days.
One of these days.
Also, it should be noted that this man, he waited. Should I even tell people this?
I don't give a shit. Go ahead.
This man waited outside of my house for an hour and 45 minutes for me to get home so we could do this podcast.
You know what? It's fine because I literally just I watched YouTube videos of the Daily Show and Let's Plays. And which I was going to do at my house anyway.
Okay, cool.
So I just did it kind of sitting on the hood of your Jeep instead and getting lots of weird looks from people as they pass.
So my work schedule is not the type where I walk out the door, where I punch out at 5 and walk out the door. So I got stuck a little bit late, and so unfortunately for Tracey, he had some waiting to do. But that is some serious commitment to podcasting right there.
I mean, I love this shit. I love talking to all you beautiful bitches and bastards. I'm sorry. You don't deserve that kind of verbal abuse. You're all wonderful. And
can that be our official title for?
Yeah. Would you guys prefer to be?
Please let us know if you would like to be referred to as our bitches and bastards for the remainder and eternity of this.
I feel like we've mostly been calling them ladies and gentlemen, bitches and bastards, cats and kittens. Maybe.
Cats and kittens.
Like that's like a 50s thing. Like, hey, you cats and kittens out there listening to a 509.
I don't think people spoke like that in the 50s. Maybe 60s.
Maybe. I don't know the 50s as well. A
lot of suits, fedora hats.
I want a zoot suit.
Zoot suit. That's also the 60s.
Oh, is that? Well, I'm just. You know what? I need to read a fucking history book, or maybe a cultural history book. I don't know. But
so
yeah,
we're gonna start a new podcast that's all about the 50s and 60s.
No, dude, we don't have fucking time for that.
Yeah, we don't have.
We don't have time. We barely have time for this podcast.
Yeah, so we were gonna do 2 podcasts, and I quickly realized. Well, maybe not quickly, but I realized that there's just no way. I mean, maybe in the future I would love to do another one, but I think if we're being honest with ourselves, 2 podcasts a week. I don't know. Maybe I should have started podcasting in college when I actually had time for stuff. But I do not.
Well, you didn't know me then. We didn't have this beautiful bromance going on.
You also would have been in high school, so our bromance would have been a little weird.
Yeah, he's 4 years older than me. He's a cradle robber. Son of a bitch. I'm a sucker. Anyway, so I think we'll either just make our podcasts like sort of superhero centric and then talk about whatever, or do like alternating really superhero centric and then whatever the fuck we want to talk about podcast.
I think it's pretty clear that when we do this, we ramble about a lot of stuff. So I think that we can say we'll tell people that it's about superheroes to suck them in, and then they'll just listen to us talk about all kinds of other stuff.
Haha, you've fallen for our fucking trap. Remember that time we were talking about Black Panther? Yeah, those were some great memories.
yeah, back in the day.
But yeah, I feel. Oh man, and I'm gonna apologize to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just gonna stick with the safe one for now. I want to apologize to you guys if you hear me sniffling and coughing. I'm really sorry for that if that like takes you out of it. I originally lived in the north, and I came down here, and I thought my days of getting colds and sniffles and coughs were done. But I apparently Key West is a tourist-heavy town, if you didn't know that, and lots of people are coming in with lots of different plagues or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And I work at the Eco Center down here, which is kind of half aquarium, half museum, and we just get all sorts of people coming in asking questions. And earlier in the week, we got like 70 fifth graders or something like that, and I had to take control of that situation, and I think one of them gave me something because
probably you got it from multiple. You probably have multiple diseases. Right now.
This might be my final podcast. You guys, I feel my body failing as we speak.
So yes, in this town we meet people from all over the world on a regular basis, and they all bring poisonous things with them and give them to us as a
like
thank you.
Ideas and emotions and
yeah. We don't like other cultures, so stop coming here.
America, America first. I think
That's why I hate Black Panther so much because it's not American.
And because I see his skin color and I get scared because it is not me. And then I crack open a Bud Light and watch some.
That's why I need Everett Ross.
I was watching. Who's the guy that does the? Who's the guy that screams at everybody? Not Bill O'Reilly. I feel like I'm really displaying my
yeah. Let's try and steer away from politics.
So anyway, Black Panther was fucking epic.
Okay, so now since I don't even think we really did this last time. I think we really didn't talk about the MCU. Let's talk about the MCU a little bit. Let's talk about the MCU and let's talk a little bit about about the Black Panther implications.
Yeah, let's talk about his relevance to the NCU because the NCU, the National Corporation of Undergarments.
Yes,
that's the one. The MCU. Let's say because the last time we saw Captain America, look at my hand clap made a little spike on the thing.
Good job.
Yeah, Chris. I did it. I understand how sound works. So last time we saw Captain America, he was in a Wakandan complex.
Yes.
And so I mean that's definitely a huge time. Actually, you were telling me. So does the Black Panther movie this all takes place before Civil War, right?
No.
This takes place after?
After Civil War.
Are you shitting me?
No. I'm not shitting you.
How? Okay.
It's, okay, so let's do a quick rundown of how this is all working.
This rum
Black Panther.
This rum is good.
It's good and strong. Black Panther takes place after Captain America Civil War. Every single MCU movie in Phase 3, except for Guardians of the Galaxy, takes place pretty much after Civil War.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy can take place whenever the fuck it wants.
It's supposed to take place a few months after Guardians of the Galaxy 1, which was before Civil War. I mean, I have to break out my timeline and look at it, but...
Whip out, like, this scroll.
But, so Guardians of the Galaxy 1 came out in 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy 1, the original.
I thought it was 2013.
No. In 2013 was Iron Man 3, and then Thor the Dark World.
Oh.
2014 we had Captain America the Winter Soldier, and then after that was Guardians of the Galaxy. And so Guardians of the Galaxy... Well, okay, so... First of all, this is something.
So if we have to title this fucking episode, it's gonna be like we talk about Black Panther ... or something like that.
So real quick, for those of you who are super invested in the MCU, like I personally am, the timeline is up in the air right now because we all thought we knew basically what it was, and then Spider-Man: Homecoming threw us a serious loop, and a lot of people are speculating that what happened in Doctor Strange affected the timeline. And so now I don't know if that's true or if the people who make the movies just are not quite as hyper specific as a lot of the fans are.
Yeah.
So one of those is true. It's either they're not as hyper specific as we are, or they know what they're doing and they are messing with the timeline a little bit. But from what I remember, without going back and actually looking, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 happened in about sometime in 2014. and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is intended to happen a few months later, so probably still in 2014. And then all the other ones happened 2016 or later, because they all follow after Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
And so Black Panther is supposed to be pretty soon after that. Because in Civil War, T'Chaka dies. King T'Chaka dies. And that leaves T'Challa to take over as king. And that's why they did the ritualistic challenge. Because anytime there's a new king...
So he had all that time to just kind of... So when all that time when he was just running around, he didn't have any of the special powers imbued?
No, he did. But here's the thing. So you can still be the Black Panther without being king of Wakanda.
Oh.
Technically.
So did he just get defaulted until they had the official ritual?
Well, I think one of the things that they...
I mean, what kind of power system is that? Is if the king dies and the son becomes the default, like, what if he just has a coup and just... Because he's got the powers of the Black Panther.
Well, I think the idea is that okay, so this is basically what they said in the movie.
I don't mean to poke holes in plot lines.
No. This is good. This is the kind of stuff that I love.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it.
I love it.
So, the idea is that no other tribe has ever been king of Wakanda for the entire history of the nation.
Yeah.
It's always been T'Chaka's and T'Challa's tribe. I have to go back and watch the movie again, but I can't remember the name of their tribe. But they've always been king, and at this point, it's like the challenge is such a formality that the fact that anybody... M'Baku challenged him in the movie. Remember the first time?
That's
the gorilla?
What a freaking cool name.
I know, it's a cool name.
M'Baku.
But M'Baku challenged him, and it was like a shock, because no one's challenged T'Challa's tribe for generations. So the fact that T'Challa took over the role as the Black Panther as his father aged out of it I don't know if it's always been that way, but at least what I took from it is that it was kind of assumed that he would be the next king of Wakanda, because no one ever challenged that. No one really ever challenged.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, man. Imagine T'Chaka trying to fit into that skin tight suit.
Right, exactly. So basically, you can still be the king of Wakanda as long as you're alive, but you may pass on the role of Black Panther, who's kind of like the protector of Wakanda.
Yeah.
And so in in Civil War, T'Challa is already the Black Panther, and so when his father dies, he has already been consuming the heart-shaped herb to get the powers, and he already has been wearing the vibranium Black Panther suit.
That sounds like a very I feel like I've played a video game in the past where there was like a healing item or a strengthening item called the heart-shaped herb. It's a very cool name. I'm sorry, continue.
Is. You know, it's really weird that I don't know how 1960s Jewish Stan Lee came up with a character that could like genuinely work as an African icon or an African American icon. It seems weird, but I mean, I'm not saying that the first incarnation of Black Panther was nearly as good as what we just saw on screen. All I'm saying is Stan Lee is he's a
progressive motherfucker.
He's a progressive motherfucker, no doubt about it. I mean, and I have to look at the timeline again, but I think I think that he put out the character of Black Panther before the Black Panther Party developed, because I don't even think he would be dumb enough.
No, I agree with you. I don't think I'd have to look that. Okay,
let's look. Crazy's gonna look it up.
Yeah, you talked a little bit. You listen to the sultry sounds of his voice as I look up some things.
But I think in the 60s, if a writer for mainstream America named a character after that political party, it probably would not have gone in his favor. So either he's really brave, or he came out with the name first, or at least before it was widely known. So I'm not sure either way, but But the point is, Stanley, he came up with a lot of really cool stuff, no doubt about it.
Yeah, 100%. His first, so Black Panther's first appearance was in
67?
Was in 1966. Fantastic Four
Number
issue
52.
Issue 52. Let's look at the Black Panther political movement.
Okay. But again, going back to how it relates to the MCU. So a lot of people thought...
October of 1966.
No shit. So...
Wait. So, Black Panther.
Okay, so the Black Panther movement
Hero.
evolved in October 1966.
And the hero was in July.
Holy shit. So, can you believe...
Oh my god.
So, Stan Lee created the character of Black Panther, not 4 months.
Do you think that was their inspiration?
If it was, that's one of the most badass
Oh my god.
ever.
Oh my god. What kind of shit is this?
But basically, I know that later on they tried to kind of change the name of the superhero to they did a few. They did like Black Leopard. They just did Panther because they were like, this is a little bit intense for us.
There were a lot of heroes back in the day that had black in their name because they were black,
like Black Goliath,
Black Lightning.
Black Lightning. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But you know what? Whatever. I mean, at this point, it was probably like a little bit racist at the time, but now clearly it's being owned. You know, and that's it's a badass character. So.
Oh my god, he's awesome. I just want to go back to Killmonger for a minute because what a fucking awesome villain.
Yeah.
Holy shit, dude. Like, I'm gonna pour some more rum to get talking about him because he's. You're good. Okay.
I'm good.
This is maybe my last point.
I have to work in the morning.
I have to drive. I only live 15 minutes from you, so.
15 minutes if you drive very slowly.
I'm going to drive extremely slowly. Hey, all of you wonderful people out there.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive. I'm gonna wait until I feel completely safe to. I'm probably gonna like drink a bunch of water before I head out.
Yeah, this is it's not a joking matter, but
no, it's not.
But yeah.
But stay safe out there, all of you people.
So yeah, Killmonger's an amazing villain because they made him. They kind of, I think they did something really important, and they basically said, if there is an African nation who is so advanced, then how can they have let African Americans or black people around the world be tread upon as they have been throughout history? It's kind of, I think that's an important question to answer. Yeah. Even in a world that is not ours, really, it's an important question to answer. It's kind of like, how did you let this happen to us? So,
and I think there's a subtle thing in there. I think this is really beautiful and telling about Wakandan culture that they think they think of all black people out wherever they are in the world as their brothers and sisters.
Well, some do, like some do, and some don't. Yeah, that's the thing.
Like, because I mean, like they could easily they're the super wealthy, super advanced society. They could just sit in their ivory tower and not do anything about anything.
Well, that's what they've done for millennia, and that's the idea. And but so some Nakia, she's one, the love interest of T'Challa. She is one who believes that they should be doing more for the outside world, and she specifically refers to them as brothers and sisters now. But obviously, the kings of Wakanda haven't felt that way throughout time. Yeah. They felt that they were outsiders. They are not their own. It's not their way to interfere with the outside world. So it's kind of, I think it's very relevant to American politics as well. And without delving into my own necessarily opinions, definitely what the movie is saying is that we have the power as Americans to affect the world around us. And like I said, without delving into my own personal politics, the movie is definitely saying we're this incredibly powerful country, Wakanda, which the United States happens to be compared to the rest of the world. What do we do with that power? Do we let humanity, who are our brothers and sisters around the world, suffer, or do we do something to help them? So it says something about the brotherhood of Africans and African Americans and Black people, but it also says something about the brotherhood of humanity as well, I think. And so
100%. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons that the movie speaks to so many people.
It spoke to me because in particular, I remember throughout high school and college, whenever I would take literature, composition classes, English classes, there would always be a theme of the civil rights movement brought up, and it would always be Martin Luther King Jr. versus Malcolm X, and I think this was very much a story of the two of them. I think there's parallels with that. The X-Men definitely did that. Professor Xavier versus Magneto. That was the same exact.
I think that sorry to cut
I know for a fact that X-Men, the X-Men struggle. Stanley took inspiration from the apartheid movement out of that, and I think out of this, we see somebody that's struggling for equality across the board versus somebody who wants the. I don't want to use the term underdogs, but the oppressed.
Well, I think it's. I don't like to. So I think basically what you're saying is that Killmonger is kind of a representation of Malcolm X, but the only thing is that without necessarily going too much into that, I think that T'Challa, he cannot really be used for a real representation of Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King was strictly anti-violence. Something I personally agree with, and so while I love to see action movies, it also does clash a little bit with my personal views.
No, I agree. I'm a very non-confrontational person. I guess. I think
Martin Luther King might not be the right person. I think it is a clash of ideas.
Ideals maybe, but not in practice, because definitely Martin Luther King was all about nonviolence.
And,
you're right.
And I think T'Challa definitely. I mean, his intro is basically after the 1992 Oakland scene. It shows him just beating the crap out of a bunch of they make the audience against these characters because they're human traffickers, but still, I mean, Martin Luther King would have them, tried by a jury, not beaten. I mean, like the first guy I think he flies into a Jeep so hard that the Jeep breaks. I mean, that guy's not alive, right?
that's there's no way. That's one of those things. Is when I watch movies and I read comic books, I'm like so pro vigilante justice.
Yeah.
But in real life, if that ever happened, if you see that on the news, somebody's like, some dude in a fucking costume beat the shit out of some gangsters today, and it was like, he should be seeing a therapist.
Well, it's such a funny thing. I mean, the whole idea of comic books, they evolved from a time when organized crime was kind of a ruling part of the everyday person's life. Like, maybe you weren't involved with it, but you were affected by it. And so, it
was either that or war propaganda.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was one of the two. It's either war propaganda or making kids feel like they could do something against organized crime. But
I want to sock Hitler on the jaw.
Yeah, but these days it's different. I mean, yes, the world experiences a lot of terrible things, but at the same time, I, as an American, this is so political. But you know what? Screw it, because this is a political movie. It really is, and they didn't hold back, so I guess we shouldn't either. But personally, I'm a pretty non-violent person, so in terms of vigilante justice, I'm very torn, because I believe that what has to be done, but I also believe that the answer to bringing people together, bringing humanity together, is not violent in any way, shape, or form. And so, I mean, I guess it's only right that we really talk about this in a podcast talking about this movie. But I mean, it's interesting. It's a tough thing to really put a stamp on either way. I think that this. Yeah, it's really tough to talk about.
it's tough to talk about a superhero movie that's so poignant and so relevant to our current political and social situation.
It's such
without delving into political and social aspects.
It's really, really funny when you compare it to a movie like Spider-Man: Homecoming, which is so good in its own way. It's
it's so safe. It's so safe to talk about.
It is very safe. It's very safe because Spider-Man: Homecoming is about a white kid who maybe doesn't have all the opportunities in the world, but I mean, at the same time, he. His problems are high school problems.
Yeah,
they're the problems that I had.
Like, I came over tonight and I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about this movie. This movie is really great and it's gonna be fine and no problem's gonna rise. And then here I am sitting here fucking stumbling over every word I'm about to say. I'm like choosing everything. I'm drinking rum and trying to fucking choose the next word I say very carefully because I don't want to, I don't want to ostracize anybody, but I want to this movie made me feel things and it made me think things and it got me a little bit politically charged.
I think this is the answer to Marvel movies because Marvel movies are so good to those of us who are so nostalgic about the characters, and they're so good to people who like what they've been to be upbeat and kind of a little bit snarky, a little bit light, and it's such an answer. It's like, hey, guess what? We can do that really well, but we can also do some totally different things.
And I think that's fantastic. I'm gonna compare this to Guardians of the Galaxy for a second because Guardians of the Galaxy made me laugh my ass off, but it had so much heart in it that during the "We Are Groot" scene, I tear up every time. This movie, there are parts of it that make me laugh my ass off that are like super cool, super cartoony. The fucking war rhinos come in, and that final battle was holy shit. That was cool, and all those parts with his sassy younger sister, and then right at the end is like. Well, live my life in bondage.
Oh my god!
Holy shit! Do I want to live my life in bondage?
That line will live on for generations. 100%. It really will because it's so relevant. I mean, it's incredibly poignant, no doubt about it.
Killmonger's dying words are they still hit hard. They carved a little part in my heart.
Yeah. Well, it was very, very wise of Ryan Coogler to kill off that character because it made his intentions more pure. Yeah. In a way,
it made his message stand out.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of being someone who wanted for himself necessarily, his whole he did not preserve himself because that's not really what he was all about at all. And so I guess the best way to describe that character is it's really, really intense because he was a character who felt so passionately and lived so passionately that he influenced the entire belief system of those who have the real power to make change, aka T'Challa and the royal family.
Look at all the families that changed over to his side.
So everything that happened,
he created a civil war. By himself.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that Killmonger, he lived so passionately for what he believed in that it completely changed the worldview of the most powerful political leader in the world. Yeah. And so I think that really does speak to American politics in that, again, it's really hard to make generalizations about it, but I think that it's important when we look at how we operate, because we've been, as Americans, the most powerful nation in the world, generally speaking, for, at least my whole lifetime, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we get comfortable with that. It is the status quo. And then what makes us change our ways? Because without getting into specifics, anytime you hit a status quo, you want to look at anytime you get to a status quo, you want to consider what is better, you know, because you get comfortable. So even if there are good things and bad things about a civilization, any civilization throughout all of history, you want to look at what could be better.
Yeah, and look at this movie in comparison, like superhero movies in general, especially the ones in the MCU. It's usually the heroes trying to change the status quo of the situation that they're in. They're in a bad situation. They want to make it better. They want to change the status quo. This one was also unique in that it was trying to keep the status quo. Killmonger wanted to change Uganda's policies very drastically, and
I'm gonna have to edit out Uganda.
Oh my god! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Wakanda. I've been watching too many the fucking Ugandan Knuckles memes mixed up with my proper sensibilities. I'm sorry, folks.
It's okay. I'm gonna edit it out. Just dive right into Wakanda. To Wakanda's sensibilities.
Yeah. So the other thing is, and Black Panther wanted to maintain the status quo in Uganda and like their sensibilities. And
you just said Uganda again, dude.
I said Wakanda.
No, you didn't.
No, my God. Wakanda with a fucking W. Oh my God. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So the point is that Killmonger wants to change the status quo. The hero wants to maintain the status quo, and.
I'm a fucking dumbass.
Oh man, this is gonna be fun to listen to again.
What a fucking train wreck.
And so that's really unique from a lot of stories in which the narrator, so to speak, is trying to tell a story in which the status quo is not necessarily what you want. They make the hero rebellious in some way, but they were really, really unique in this film because the hero was in fact pro status quo, and then sort of enlightened by the villain or by the antagonist, because the antagonist was anti-status quo, the antagonist was rebellious. And I think that's one of the things that allows us as Americans to relate to the movie, because we can still see ourselves as the hero, kind of being awoken to the fact that we need to change some things about ourselves. Now,
exactly. Yeah.
I really don't want to get political in terms of like a person-to-person basis, but I believe that.
But here's the thing is there was a status quo in Wakanda. There's a status quo in Wakanda that Black Panther that T'Challa wanted to maintain. Killmonger came in and wanted to change that status quo, and then T'Challa fought to keep the status quo until the very end. But he was like you said, he was enlightened by the ideas for change, and seeing the bigger picture, and he ended up creating a compromise. He ended up creating a really well thought out compromise by establishing themselves as a world power and kind of revealing themselves. And I think this is the same vein of what you're talking about is what America needs to do. Is there are a lot of people in America that want to maintain the status quo. There's a lot of people in America that want change. I think that a compromise is in order, which is a thing that doesn't seem to be feasible in the current political climate.
Let's not go there, because let me just say this.
Compromise. I'm just going to say compromise is a good thing.
I'll say two things. First of all, I'm terrified to listen to this podcast and see exactly how many people we alienate. But again,
our second episode.
But you know what? Like, I don't believe that it is. I don't believe that it is impossible in the current climate, because you know what? This movie is on pace to be one of the biggest box office successes of all time. So I think that speaks to what people are ready for. I believe that it speaks that people are ready for change, that people are ready for more than what we have now. And again, I just, without trying not to tell people how to live their lives, trying not to tell people what to believe in, the fact that this movie is so outrageously successful speaks, at least to me, that people are ready to see something new, no matter what exactly it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this movie it's breaking boundaries in the MCU, in superhero movies, which in the scheme of life are pretty small, but it's breaking boundaries in the scheme of the mainstream pop culture, which is, that in itself is huge.
Yeah.
Mainstream pop culture tends not to like to, it tends not to like to veer off hard from what is currently existing.
Yeah, well, mainstream culture found a formula for what people like, and they know what sells and what makes money and what gets popular. So they don't want to
mess with it.
Yeah. So I think this movie took some risks, 100%, and I love that they didn't whitewash it.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Except for Everett Ross.
Yeah. Oh, Martin Freeman. I hope he flipped off the camera a bunch.
Yeah.
You've seen those videos of him on the set of The Hobbit flipping the cameras off. That's like his MO.
So what I also watched Thor Ragnarok because it was released like 2 days ago for home media.
No, was it?
So I rewatched it. And guess what? I like that movie. Okay, so I liked it in the theaters, but I felt like it was like a wave of everyone's supposed to like it. Guess what? I really like that movie.
I really
it's
did
so
too.
good. I was wondering when I rewatched, like before I rewatched it, I was wondering if I would have actually really liked it as much as I thought that I did the first time, and I liked it better the second time through. I thought they did a great job with that movie.
I saw it 3 times in theaters.
Really?
I did. I really loved it. I'm a sucker for it. It made me laugh so hard the first time I watched it. And I comedy is my muse. So I got so fucking suckered into watching it again, and I just kept recommending it to people, and they were like, "Well, will you go see it with me?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'll go see it with you." So I watched it with them over and over.
So I mean, in the scheme of MCU movies, it maybe isn't in the top 5, but in the scheme of some of the movies I've really enjoyed watching a second time through, it's high up there.
I mean, it really picked on itself. It brought the Thor movies up until this. The first 2 Thor movies were they were trying to take a relatively kind of out there sort of weird character, make him very serious.
Well, yeah, I think it's a weird character to try and play with in a sandbox situation, because Thor he's a Norse god, and Norse gods, they're intense. Whether they're the god of chaos, the god of thunder, the god of whatever, they're very intense personalities.
And apparently very Shakespearean.
Well, they are
very formal.
I think. I mean, whether you want to say Shakespearean or not, I think that what people see in them it's Shakespearean, because Shakespeare's characters are caricatures in a way, but they're very intense, because not all of his plays range from drama to comedy.
Yeah.
And so, but the way that we've perceived Norse gods has been Shakespearean in the dramatic way. And I think that what we got in Ragnarok was Shakespearean in a comedic way.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was completely out of touch. It just I think that the idea of putting a character into live action who is a superhero and at the same time a medieval or pre-medieval god, it's a hard thing to do, because what Stan Lee did with Thor in the 60s was he was not he was not the god of thunder. He was a kind of a low self-esteem doctor who obtained the power of Thor.
I really forget about his true comic origins a lot because I get so sucked into the MCU.
Yeah, and so I'm glad they did what they did, but in the MCU, but the original character of Thor, he was a doctor who had basically a physical disability and obtained the power of Thor. So Thor, everything he did as Thor was actually Donald Blake, in the same way that Spider-Man's still Peter Parker. He just has...
Well, I felt like in the original, though, it was really the Hammer that did mostly, because his personality changed entirely when he was under the influence of the Hammer.
Well, that's the same as Peter Parker. So when Peter Parker put on the costume, he was Spider-Man, and he had a more brave, brash persona. When he was Peter Parker, he was very shy.
I know, that was actually one of my favorite. They did an entire they did kind of an aside in the old Spider-Man comics where they did like a rundown of all of his powers. And they did a rundown of his powers with like his strength, speed, reflexes, spider sense, whatever, webs. And then at the very end, it had like a little blurb about spider speech. Because Spider-Man is a huge shit talker.
Yeah.
And he would make fun of his enemies. He would distract them with his talk, and I feel like that actually was a turning point in a lot of battles. Was his mocking ended up like offsetting or upsetting or distracting his villains.
And in the comic books, in the original comic books, like if you read Amazing Fantasy 15 and you read The Amazing Spider-Man #1, you see that when he puts on the costume, he is a little bit different. He's Peter Parker who lets his words out. Yeah. And when he's Peter Parker without the costume, he keeps everything inside. He takes the verbal abuse from his colleagues, his high school counterparts, and Thor is the same way. Basically, Donald Blake, it's more like a soap operatic love interest type of thing, so nobody makes fun of him except for his love interest, who does also want him, but is like, she's like, I like him, but I wish he could be like Thor. It's like it's a very cheesy thing, but he is Donald Blake, the doctor. He doesn't say anything. He says like he's very self-deprecating, and he kind of has a physical disability to accentuate his self-deprecation. But when he's Thor, he's very physically powerful. Probably, I mean, debatably, he's the most physically powerful compared to the Hulk. But he is also very outgoing, confident, and he even flirts with that love interest. And the constant joke is, I wish he was like Thor, and then Donald Blake always has a little thought bubble saying, if only she knew, or something along those lines.
Just for the sake of being the devil's advocate, there is a powerful mythical object in the mix. How much of that is Donald Blake and how much is the Hammer?
But I think that's the whole idea. To me as a reader who has actually like, I actually don't even know. Have you read Journey into Mystery, like number 77 or whatever?
I read his origin story, but I don't really know much about the original Thor.
Okay, so I've read
actually the Thor that I started with Thor when it was the female Thor, the cancer patient.
Okay, so
I can't remember her name.
Like, I cannot claim that my interpretation is the right interpretation, but based on my interpretation of the original 1960s comics,
yeah,
it's the same as Spider-Man. It has nothing to do with the Hammer. The Hammer is a MacGuffin that makes... it is what allows this everyday person, the guy who relates to you and I, Donald Blake is me. Peter Parker is me.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man is who I want to be. Thor is who I want to be. It's the same exact thing. When they were pumping out these comics in the 60s, this was the idea, is that it's not the costume that makes the person. It's not the hammer that makes the person. It's just that sometimes we allow ourselves to feel like we can't be what we want to be.
I'm nothing without this costume.
Yeah, exactly. Like that to me says everything that Spider-Man is. That Peter Parker is Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
If you're nothing without the costume, you don't deserve
exactly. It's one of the, and like that is why I love these movies, because like it's so poignant. And the 60s comics were so goddamn poignant. I mean, it has nothing to do with Thor. Like, it really has nothing to do with Thor. It's the fact that this person is you and I, and if we just had this one thing that made us physically powerful, then we could be what we really are in our hearts. And that... Anyway, this has been a really, really roundabout way of getting into the first Thor movie, but the point is that Donald Blake is you and I. Peter Parker is you and I, and a lot of these characters are you and I. Now, there are others that aren't, but these particulars, they are. Peter Parker is very much Donald Blake. They're very similar type characters.
Yeah.
And Thor and Spider-Man are very similar characters. It's just that, like, Stanley kind of wrote them a little bit differently. Like, Peter Parker, he is sarcastic and a little bit funnier, and Thor is like a little bit like
more
bravado-ish,
theatrical.
Yeah, he's a bit more theatrical. Exactly. So it's kind of like Stanley's way of saying we are all these people who are afraid to be who we really are, but all it takes is one little thing to allow us to be who we really are. Like this protection of our identity.
That makes my heart feel really good, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's why people love Stan Lee, man. He did such a damn good job of saying, hey, all you people who feel like your voice isn't heard, who feel like you can't do what you really want to do, guess what? All it takes is a silly red and blue costume. All it takes is a little hammer, and you can be that person. That's why everyone relates to superheroes, is because superheroes, at their heart, are human beings who take matters into their own hands, who are what they feel inside. And I think it's a very American thing, because Americans uniquely repress themselves, you know? And I think that there are other cultures who relate to that, but I think Americans do it particularly well. We repress what's inside of us.
I would definitely. There are a lot of standards and a lot of traditions that people try to uphold in this country that I feel like kind of offset what we actually feel and what we actually want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have a lot of ideas about what do we do. What do we get? Who are we? And what do we present to everybody else? It's a cultural thing for sure.
This episode's gotten a lot
deeper than
I thought it was going to be.
Expected.
I'm going to bring it back for 1 second because I actually just started thinking about a thing that happened to me today. I'm just gonna lighten things up and tell a story about from work. So Tracey works at the Eco Discovery Center in Key West, which again is like sort of half museum, half aquarium, and I just greet people and I learn them things about science and the environment because I like that shit. I'm a marine biologist, so I got involved in a fight today between old friends. These two older gentlemen, I'm going to say like they were in their early 70s, we're getting into a squabble.
Two 70-year-old gentlemen came to fisticuffs in front of
I
Tracy's
would
eyes.
I would actually love to see that fight. It's like it would end very sadly, but but they were arguing in the corner, and I was just kind of standing around trying to be helpful, just giving off a general vibe of helpfulness, and I guess it worked because one of them called me over. The argument that they had got into is one of them had noticed an informational pamphlet about penguins, and they thought that penguins were fish. And so this one 70-year-old man was arguing...
I won't comment on that.
This one 70-year-old man was arguing that penguins are in fact fish, while the other one was correctly arguing that they were in fact flightless birds. And they asked me over, they're like, hey, you work here, you know things about things. And I was like, oh yeah, that's my job. And so I came over, and then one guy was like, penguins are fish, right? Like, they swim in the water, they catch fish, so they're fish. And, I'm sorry. And the other, and I just turned to him like, well, actually, penguins are actually flightless birds. They have waterproof feathers, which is indicative of birds, and they have relatively hollow bones, and they are actually warm-blooded. And
can you believe, or can you imagine existing for 3/4 of a century believing that penguins are fish? I mean, like, I think that's pretty indicative of, like, not to necessarily bring it back to politics, but the status quo. Let's realize that just because things have been this way for a while doesn't necessarily mean they need to keep being that way. We can get better, I promise.
People don't like to admit they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think people take that personally, and they take that into themselves as a human being. Like, if something that they know or that they feel that there's some evidence that it's wrong, they think that makes them less of a person, I guess. I don't know, but that's how this guy reacted. Basically, I was basically telling this dude that penguins were fish, that they are in fact birds, and he turned to me with the blankest, most serious stare, and he looked at me in the eye. He was like, "You're a goddamn fool." And
he said that.
He said that to me, and then he walked away. And I just stood there like, oh, okay.
You know what? I think some things are just meant to be. Like, this story, this event could not have happened in Tracy's life if it was not for the fact that we were going to talk about Black Panther tonight.
It's so good.
Like, this is a representation of everything we've been talking about tonight. Like okay, doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. To me, like, I am not a person who judges you on... we all believe in different things, because belief, it's a powerful thing. But no matter what you believe in, there is always the possibility to get better. And I feel strongly that any person in the world should feel that way. So yeah. If you have this belief system, question your own belief system. Question what you've been told. Question what is.
Question everything.
Yeah, and you don't have to think everything I believe is wrong necessarily, but wonder to yourself, like, maybe penguin aren't fish. Maybe, just maybe, penguin aren't fish.
that in a phrase is why I love science, because science, I think science is a beautiful thing, because in science people question themselves all the time, and we become better for it. It's that old phrase, the more I see, the less I know. Or maybe that was a Michael Franti song. I think it was definitely in a Michael Franti song. But it's I think that's important to look at the world around you and see if things are as they seem. To question things if they don't seem right, and if you use a proper scientific method, then you can discover if they in fact are or are not correct. And that's just how life goes. If something's wrong, just be like, oh, well, I was wrong, and then move on.
It's not even really about being wrong, per se, to me. Like, at least in the way I look at it, it's more just about the ability to improve. You know, it's really about that. It's like I think one of the things that people have a problem with, like for instance, the gentleman today who was very adamant that penguin are fish. It doesn't have to be that you're wrong. It's just that now you know penguins are birds, and now you're more knowledgeable. Like I think that's one of the things that people struggle with, is that instead of being wrong, you can just know more. It's as simple as that, and it's all about how you look at the world.
Yeah, I think knowing things, like, not to sound like this intellectual snob or anything like that, but like knowing things has brought me the most happiness out of anything that I do. Is knowing more things and being able to. That's why I love what I'm doing so much. I'm not necessarily a teacher, but in my profession, I do a lot of educational outreach, and so I teach people lots of things. And knowing things and passing on that information is really fucking gratifying.
And it can be logically knowing things, or it can be knowing things through wisdom, through understanding yourself better, through understanding your world better. You know, it's not always about, like, knowing a fact. It can be about understanding, you know? My cat is losing her shit right now.
We're going to have to edit this video a lot.
We're going to have to edit out some of this political stuff. We're going to have to edit out some of this belief stuff because, I mean, not that I regret saying it per se, but I think that maybe we've just repeated ourselves a little bit.
We might have.
Let's try and talk a little bit more about Marvel stuff, and that way maybe like 1/3 of what we've said tonight is about Marvel stuff, and then we can limit it to 2/3 about political and belief stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, okay, let's just breathe in out, and we're going to talk about some comic book stuff. So, what I was saying about Thor was that in the MCU, they're like, this character is the Asgardian god of thunder, whereas in the comic books, he was Donald Blake with the power of Thor. And I've read the origins, like the original comics that had Thor, but I haven't read enough to know exactly at which point they transitioned that character from Donald Blake to Thor, the Asgardian god of thunder.
I don't know either.
They basically made this movie character Thor, the God of Thunder, and they tried to like reference a lot of stuff that happened with Donald Blake. So I think that they were kind of lost in between the two.
Yeah.
In the first two movies, of being too serious and not knowing how to be light and funny like the original comics were. But I thought Thor Ragnarok, they kind of hit that point where, yes, he is Thor, the Asgardian God of Thunder, but he is also fun and humorous. Humorful, I don't think is a word, but humorful in the way that Donald Blake was. So I think they found their medium.
Yeah, some people might have thought. I definitely talked to some people that think that they overcorrected with that movie in the other direction, but I thought it was just a lot of fun. And,
I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I kind of felt that way. I felt like they were trying to recreate Guardians of the Galaxy, but it is a movie that I legitimately, upon seeing the second time, only 2 days ago now, I think, I really don't believe that. I think that they did a really, really great job of making a fun movie with a unique character, a unique supporting cast. I thought they did good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's really try and bring it back a little bit to comic books, because
maybe let's end it on a thought about Black Panther. Actually,
we can give it a little bit longer, but like let's talk about comic books a little bit, because we've talked about like everything, but
yeah. How are we gonna edit this?
Yeah, we're going to edit this for sure.
We have to, yeah. Should we? I might actually think it would be hilarious if we let my Ugandan Wakandan thing in.
We'll leave that in, but we're gonna have to edit. We're gonna have to edit out some of my goings on and on about other stuff.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about the MCU. Okay, so we will have, by the time you have listened to this, we will have edited out some of this stuff.
Yeah, our conversation got way too deep.
Too deep and too long and convoluted. And so we're going to talk about the MCU. And I probably, in the final product, I probably just said, we're going to talk about the MCU. And then you'll hear me say, we're going to talk about the MCU. But that's because when I said it the first time, we didn't. We talked about everything else.
For like a half an hour.
So basically, the story of these characters as we are following them right now is that there are 6 Infinity Stones.
Yes.
So
I really thought that the Black Panther was going to introduce.
Well, I did too.
Another one.
So I thought that when I went to see Thor Ragnarok, I thought I was going to find out where the Soul Stone was. Like most people, it was either going to be in Thor's hammer or in Heimdall. Okay? And then it didn't. And then everyone's like, oh, it's going to be in Black Panther. And then guess what? It wasn't. So what I've read as an overzealous fan is essentially that vibranium is enough of a MacGuffin, so to speak, enough of a sort of a mystical thing that they don't need to add something like the Soul Stone being responsible for its power. And I think the same thing inevitably is actually going to be true for Mjolnir, which is Thor's hammer, and that the Uru metal that it's made out of, like vibranium, is enough of its own. It's enough of its own mystical object or mystical material that it doesn't need to have something else behind it that gives it power. And so I now, after watching Thor Ragnarok again, I think they spent a lot of time giving Heimdall a pretty legitimate role. So I think that we are eventually going to find out that Heimdall does have the Soul Stone, which only makes sense to me because he has the ability to see every soul in the universe. That's what he can do. And very specifically, when I got to rewatch Thor Ragnarok, I think that this is... They made a point of this because in the movie, he leaves the sword with the Bifrost Bridge. And while the sword is with the Bifrost Bridge, he can still see every soul in the universe.
Oh my God.
So my question would be, how could he see every soul in the universe without the sword, which is the main power of the Bifrost Bridge? Like, that is what operates the Bifrost Bridge. That is
that'd be kind of fucking
entity.
Brilliant.
So the thing is, they I think they made a very specific point of giving Heimdall a subplot within Thor Ragnarok, and also being very specific about his ability to see every soul in the universe. Like, he still communicates with Thor.
Yeah.
Even without the sword. So
you're blowing my mind a little bit right now.
So his ability to communicate with Thor across the galaxy without the sword of Bifrost indicates that he has some kind of very specific power that is not related to the Bifrost Bridge. Because Scourge controls the Bifrost Bridge when Heimdall is in exile, right? So I think that Heimdall, with the golden eyes and everything, is going to have the golden soul stone. I believe that that's still going to be the thing. And I think it was really fun of them not to expose that in Thor Ragnarok. But I think that's what it's going to be. So I think that's going to be where we find the soul stone. And then I think that, much like the comics, when Adam Warlock is introduced...
And he will be.
It's not like he was birthed with the soul stone. He was created artificially, and he later got the soul stone. I think it's going to be the same thing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
How do you think he's going to be created?
Well, we already know how he's going to be created.
Do we? I actually don't know anything about Adam Warlock.
Did you stay for the post-credit scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
I think I did, but jog my memory.
So, do you remember Aisha? Aisha was the golden... I don't know if queen is the right word, but the golden entity. Okay, so do you remember in the opening sequence of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, they're protecting the Anulax batteries?
Yes.
Which are owned by the golden-skinned beings.
Yes.
They are, at least in the MCU, who create Adam Warlock. And there's a scene a post-credit scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, in which Aisha has, in her rage, has used Star-Lord's DNA combined with the DNA of her people to create a new next step in evolution. And she has this moment where she says, I've created the next step in evolution, and I think I'll call him Adam. That's going to be Adam Warlock.
Oh my god, I was really drunk when I saw Guardians 2.
So
wow.
So yeah, I probably didn't blow all of your minds as much as I just did Tracy's, but
I'm sitting here wide-eyed staring at nothing.
But basically, that's going to be Adam Warlock, and he won't be introduced till definitely after Infinity War, maybe not even till after
so he's
Avengers
like
4.
Star Wars, like step-brother, like clone brother, half-brother.
Yeah, he will be a artificial being with part of Star-Lord's DNA. And in the comics, Adam Warlock is part of the most recent incarnation of Guardians of the Galaxy, with Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot. Anyway, the point was that I think Heimdall will have the Soul Stone. I think that Heimdall, that is how he has his power. Because how else? Like, Heimdall, he doesn't have the Sword of Bifrost, which is what gives him the power to control the Bifrost Bridge. And he has the ability to see all the souls in the world. That's how he knows when people are calling to him.
Yeah.
Right? And so how could Thor connect with Heimdall if he didn't have some sort of item or some sort of reason to have the power to see all souls in the universe? Because it's not like a traditional Asgardian power. Thor doesn't have it. I mean, Odin doesn't have it. So I think he'll have the Soul Stone.
Yeah.
And we'll find that out in Avengers Infinity War.
I think that's as good a place as any to end it. Because my mind has been thoroughly fucked.
Alright, so what we're going to do for the next episode is Tracy and I have discussed this, and we are going to do a road to Infinity War.
Yeah.
So you know how Bing Crosby and Bob Hope did a road to Rio and road to the other places?
Not to compare ourselves to those two.
Well, we are definitely that good. Like, we've actually sung and danced our whole way through this episode, so it's your loss that you haven't gotten to witness that. But we are doing a road to Infinity War, which means for every year of the MCU, there will be a week of podcasting. So the first year will be 2008, which will include Iron Man and The Incredible Hulk. So we're going to watch both of those movies, and we're going to podcast about them.
Yep.
And so we'll have to kind of somehow condense that into a somewhat brief episode. And then the good news is that we can do that next week, because in 2009 they didn't release any MCU movies.
Yeah.
So we have one extra week to work with. But we're going to do that in the weeks, aka years, leading up to Infinity War. So next week is going to be Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. The week after that will be Iron Man 2. The week after that is going to be Thor and Captain America.
Yep.
The week after that will be the Avengers. The week after that will be Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World, which is not the greatest of weeks, but we'll suffer through it.
Yeah.
And then the year after that will be Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy, which will be a serious comeback.
Christ.
Then the week after that, we get to do Age of Ultron and Ant-Man.
Yeah.
The week after that, we get to do Captain America: Civil War and Doctor Strange, which is going to be a great week.
That's despite what anybody else might think, I actually adore Captain America: Civil War.
I love both of those movies.
And Doctor Strange was fucking awesome.
And then the next week, we get to do Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We get to do Spider-Man: Homecoming and Thor: Ragnarok. So
fuck yes.
It's going to be another great week. And then finally, in the week leading up to Avengers: Infinity War, we're going to do a shorter podcast with Black Panther. And we're going to do we just watched Infinity War. We're going to, I don't care what the circumstances are. We will leave the theater and we will record our reaction to that movie, because it's got to happen.
Yep.
And that is our road to Infinity War. That's Bing Maxwell and Bob Tracy.
Bob Tracy.
It kind of works out somehow.
Bob Tracy.
It's going to be Bing Maxwell and Bob Tracy coming at you.
Oh shit. We're going to be coming at you like Cleopatra. God, it is late.
Alright, yeah, we got to put an end to this. It's already been a lot longer than I wanted.
Thanks for putting up with our ramblings. You're all wonderful. This has been an excellent hour and a half of podcast. I don't know how long the end result's going to be, but we're definitely going to take some of the meatier parts out for you. But you know what? We love all of you out there, and tune in next.
All you bitches and bastards.
All you bitches and bastards, tune in next week or next whenever the next episode airs. So we're still editing. But thanks for sticking with us, if you are in fact sticking with us, and we'll keep it tight, keeping it tight for all y'all out there.
Tight butthole.
Tight buttholes, the tightest. All right.